Hello and welcome to another episode of EU Decoded, a podcast by the EPP Group in the European Parliament. Before we head into a short summer break, we're taking you inside the EPP Group's Startup and Scale-Up Summit, where entrepreneurs, investors and members of the European Parliament came together to discuss one important question. How can Europe become a better place to build and grow innovative businesses? Throughout the discussions, one message came through loud and clear. Europe has enormous potential, but companies and investors still face too many obstacles when trying to scale across the single market. MEP Lydia Pereira, who initiated the summit, outlined some of the biggest challenges.
Some of the obstacles are related to market fragmentation. So companies have to deal with different tax and legislation regimes across member states. They have to fill in 60 different corporate forms. And so it's really hard to scale across Europe.
As MEP Pereira explained, operating across 27 different tax and administrative systems remains a major challenge. But what does it look like in practice? We spoke to entrepreneurs and investors from across Europe, and their message was clear. Bureaucracy is only part of the problem. Nuno Sebastião, CEO of Feedzai, a company that uses advanced machine learning technology to combat financial fraud, believes the real problem lies elsewhere.
It's not a challenge to pay taxes or in all these different countries. So I would argue that that's the easy part, that's the mechanical part. It's a function of cost, of complying with specific aspects of regulation. You can do it. And if there's a business incentive, you will do it. That's not the problem. Money will show up to do that. I see that that's what a lot of people focus on as solve. If we solve that, everything's going to be magical. I don't necessarily agree that that's enough. Because the biggest challenge on the 27 markets is what we observe here in Europe, that as a global company, I don't observe in similar size blocks, like, for instance, the US. In the US, if you sell to a client, it doesn't matter if the client's in this state or that state. Your reputation as a supplier will follow, and then that, let's assume it's a big, whatever industry you work in, it's a leading company. The halo effect, and then the referenceability of that client you can use across the entire country. In Europe, that's the challenge.
Market fragmentation was also brought up by MEP Christian Ehler. In his view, access to capital is only one reason why many European companies expand to the United States. Just as important is access to one large integrated market.
It is not just seeking for capital that they go to the United States. They're seeking simply for the leverage possibility of a bigger market. And the market fragmentation is simply the second argument besides the lack of private sector capital why you go to the US. Because if you have a company and you have one product and you bring it into the market, you have a leverage, whereas you have a fragmented market in Europe and the costs for the fragmentation are dramatically high.
Another recurring theme throughout the summit was talent. How can Europe attract and retain talent, both European and global? According to Liz Fleming, Chief Ecosystem Officer at South Summit, investment naturally follows talent. But how can Europe create enough opportunities for talented people to build their future here?
Wherever the talent is, that's where the capital will go to. And investors are professionals at doing that, and it's becoming more and more global, so funds can come from anywhere and discover that talent almost from anywhere. So then it's really about the talent and the tech workers and the entrepreneurs, and how do we attract them and get them to come and stay. And that's related to the opportunity. It's pure market opportunity, and there's no policy involved, no politics involved. It's really about market dynamics. And the market opportunity is realized through programs like ESOPs, so employee share option schemes. It's insane that this is not standardized across the bloc. This is one of the only and the most powerful incentivizing instrument to attract talent. I mean, career development needs to be looked at from wealth accumulation perspective, and this is something we're terrible at in Europe. If you look at tech workers in other parts of the world, they're totally incentivized by their ESOP.
From a political perspective, removing barriers within the single market remains one of the key priorities for the EPP Group. MEP Pereira argues that greater harmonisation, simpler rules, and a more predictable regulatory environment would make Europe a much more attractive place for both entrepreneurs and investors.
We need to attract global researchers and we need to retain European founders and engineers. We have to make the conditions to either attract these people or to keep them here. Europe can be more attractive if we address the existing barriers in the single market. This is a political priority. But also if we move forward with initiatives like the Scale Up Fund or the EU Inc., which is a simplified, harmonized regime with harmonized stock options for investors and for making easier the scaling up process in Europe. Another element is the regulatory simplification. We have to keep moving with the simplification processes and also to have predictability in our regulatory ecosystem.
But better policies alone will not solve everything. Many entrepreneurs argue that regulation simply can't keep pace with innovation, and that gap is becoming increasingly costly. Gintare Verbitskaite, CEO of Unicorns Lithuania, says startups should be spending their time building products, not trying to navigate a massive maze of rules.
The regulation has to move at the speed of innovation, or at least try to catch up to that. And where we are now is that really the regulation is costing startups, SMEs, scale-ups a lot of time and actually money to be even compliant with what the EU requires. If you really want to go by the book, it's becoming very complex even to understand and navigate the rules, and it's also becoming expensive. And this is the reality, and startups, they want to focus on building the product and solving the real problems and, you know, creating innovation and actually scaling it and addressing global challenges from Europe. And at the moment, what we see is that, unfortunately, Europe doesn't support that speed and that ambition that very well. So from my point of view is that we definitely need to push with the simplification, with ease of helping smaller companies especially to navigate the complexity of the regulation.
Regulation also needs to be designed with the future in mind. Jakob Mokander, Vice President for Policy Europe at General Catalyst, argues that harmonising rules across Europe would make it much easier for successful companies to expand beyond their home markets. But he also warns that legislation must be flexible enough to keep pace with rapidly evolving technologies.
Write regulations and rules in a way that is future-proof. So if you take the AI Act as an example, it took 6-7 years to develop. And roughly when it was about to launch, then came generative AI, which was a new technology paradigm. And that is nothing wrong in the regulation itself, but it says that you can't be too status quo focused when you're writing the regulation, because then you're not preparing it for the future. So the rules has to be more general.
Another topic that kept returning throughout the summit was the commercialization of innovation. Europe excels at research, but turning great ideas into successful businesses often proves much more difficult. Frane Šesnić, CEO of the Zagreb Innovation Center, says researchers frequently need support to bridge the gap between scientific excellence and entrepreneurship.
In Zitzer we try and we strive to communicate with and cooperate with institutions like R&D institutions, faculties and other parts of institutions that are providing some solutions based on the research. Regarding that, they need a huge support. First of all, not a huge percentage of population is capable to become entrepreneur. And then when we analyze researchers, it's even harder to find the ones that could fit in that entrepreneurial environment. So their mindset is more focused on research and less on how to monetize the research. So it's a huge gap between the mindset of a researcher and entrepreneur. So in that manner, we try to find the skills and that are missing for the researchers, so they can become entrepreneurs.
Commercializing innovation is often easier in other parts of the world, particularly in the United States. According to MEP Dora David, simpler rules and easier access to finance make a real difference. At the same time, she believes the EU's greatest competitive advantage remains its single market, provided it continues to deepen and integrate further.
And we consistently hear that it's much easier to do business in the US because they have a truly integrated market. It's much easier to have access to it because they have simpler rules and they have easier access to finance. We touched on these topics a lot. So, the question is how we can help our businesses stay here. And I don't think there's a single solution. We talked about a multiple set of things that we could do, legislative or non-legislative. But I think one thing we have as a huge asset is the single market. So we really do need to deepen that. But I think we also need to be realistic that it's never going to be as integrated as in the US, given we have 27 different cultures, member states. But where we can push the envelope is, I think, EU Inc., the 28th regime that we've talked about. But we do really need to be ambitious about it.
That challenge extends beyond regulation. Davorin Štetner, president of the Croatian Investors and Business Angels Association, says many European companies still encounter the same message when seeking international investment: relocate your headquarters to the United States. So, what can Europe do to become a more attractive place for investors? MEP Eva Majdal argues Europe needs more practical ideas to unlock investment. Some will require new legislation, while others might not. And she points to EU Inc., a proposal for a fully digital European company that could be established online within 48 hours as an important step, while recognising that no single initiative will solve every challenge.
And one would say capital is not a problem, but to a certain extent in the scale part, it is a problem because there is not that big capital on the scaling part. So for me, there's a number of things that are in the pipeline to support commercialization, but we need more creative ideas, and sometimes they might require legislation and sometimes they don't require legislation. So the more brainstorming exercises and the more concreteness that comes out of different formats, the better. I think the 28th regime and EU Inc. is an important step in that direction, but it's not going to solve everything.
One final theme emerged repeatedly throughout our conversations: Europe's attitude towards risk. It's not that Europe lacks capital, rather too much of that capital remains on the sidelines instead of being invested in innovative companies. Jakob Mokkander believes that mindset needs to change.
We have to also change our risk aversion. So Europe is a rich continent. We have a lot of capital that is sitting, for example, in savings accounts, in pensions accounts. And if we want to be prosperous in the future, we have to take shares of that, reinvest it in the startups and entrepreneurs of the future. That will not just help our startups, but it's actually what guarantees that we can sustain our pension system and also create social value in the future. So I would say that Europe is doing a good job of creating social value, but we haven't yet found the perfect mixer for creating social value for the future with innovation.
MEP Lydia Pereira agrees. Europe needs to become more willing to take risks and more ambitious in thinking beyond national borders. Only by embracing a truly European mindset, she argues, can Europe compete successfully in the global economy.
We have to keep fighting the gold plating that still exists in member states. And we have to move from thinking national to thinking European. It's the only way that Europe can succeed in these very competitive global markets. Another aspect is related to funding. But to have funding in Europe, we need to move from being risk-averse to become risk-takers. We should not fear to fail. We should aspire to deliver. And the EPP Group, we are driving change in the European Parliament.
And that's all for this episode of EU Decoded. We'll be back after a short summer break with more stories and debates from the European Parliament. Until then, make sure to follow the EPP Group on social media. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Goodbye.